Good day, everyone. We are the Group 7, and we're going to report the Marzano'S new taxonomy. But first, I'm going to introduce the members of the group. First is Vera Alexandra Romuga, who will report the proponents of the Marzano'S new taxonomy. Second is Lorraine Malabar, who will report the definition of Marzano'S new taxonomy and the 3 domains of knowledge. Third is Balbuena, who will report the 3 kinds of memories and the first 4 levels of processing level, which is under the cognitive system. And the fourth is Carol J. Lumampao, who will report the level 5 and 6 in the processing level, which is under the metacognitive system and the self system. And the differences of Bloom's taxonomy and Marzano'S new taxonomy. And lastly is Khaith Heiven Ferras, who made the PowerPoint presentation.
So, good day everyone. So before we dig deeper to our topic, let me introduce first the 2 proponents of the new taxonomy. So the first one is Robert J. Marzano. Robert J. Marzano was a speaker, a trainer, an educational researcher in the United States, a CEO of Marzano Research Laboratory in Centennial. He has done educational research and theory in the topics of standard-based assessment, cognition, high-yield teaching strategies, and school leadership, including the development of practical programs and tools for teachers and administrators in the K-12 schools. He also proposed a new taxonomy of educational objectives in 2002, and he responds to the shortcomings of the widely used Bloom's taxonomy. So the next one is John S. Kendall. John S. Kendall was a distinguished psychology professor and the 12th president of Gustavus Adolphus College. He was an active consultant or board member for numerous organizations. He was a consulting clinical psychologist. He was also the president of the Mid-Continent Research for Education and Learning. That's all the proponents for the new taxonomy.
Hi everyone, so I am Lorraine Malabar and I am the second reporter of the last group. So, Marzano'S taxonomy helps us in understanding and how we think, we learn, and stay motivated. So, imagine you want to learn something new, a new mathematical equation or a new cooking recipe. So, Marzano'S taxonomy breaks down different steps your brain goes through during that process. So the first to fourth levels belongs to the cognitive system. So the cognitive system is where your brain does the heavy lifting. So first is the retrieval or the retrieving of information. So aning a part imong hanahunaon. Example, what are the recipe or the materials you need in cooking something. So, imo siyang hunaw-hunaon, retrieval of information. Then, the next level is understanding or the comprehension. So, imong pangutanon mong self, gamit ba siya? Kinahanglan ba siya? Is it necessary for cooking something? Or, you would figure out what you need and what you don't need. Kay imong pautanon myself man para asa man na siya, nganong kinahanglan man na siya. So the third level is the analyzing. So it is breaking things down by comparing the recipe you made before and the recipe that you made now. So imong compare ang imong gigama sa una o karon. And then the last level for the cognitive system is the utilizing. So, ang utilizing, imo na siyang gi-process, imo na siyang gihimo. So, the knowledge you would that you gained will like ang imong knowledge nga nahibaw-an imo na siyang i-apply. So ani nga part is galuto na ka. So the fifth level is known as the metacognitive system. So in the metacognitive system, so this is where you check in yourself. So first, you see goals like deciding you want to make it for dinner. So ka mag-decide, ani nga level, ani ka mag-decide kung para panihapon mo siya, pamahaw, or paniudto. And then another is that you would monitor your cook. So ga-follow ba ka sa mga steps nga kinahanglan sa pagluto ana? And then another is mag-make og adjustment. Example, parat kaayo ang imong giluto. So mangita kag lain alternative or another ways para matarong ang imong gi-process. And then the last level is the self system. So this is the level where you know about how you feel in during and making the task. So ani ang imong self emotions. So emotions ni sa ani nga level. So you consider that if you believe, then kaya nimo, mahuman nimo, then imo pangutanon or you decide nagluto ba ka kay gutom ka or nagluto ka kay giganahan lang jud ka. And then ani ang effort makita kung kintahay imo ning giluto, mag-effort ka ug samot kay giluto ni nimo para sa imong friend or giluto lang ni nimo para sa imong kagalingon or gusto lang jud ka magluto-luto. So that explains the Marzano'S taxonomy. So let us recall. So the cognitive system has the 4 level. So the first is the retrieval, second is the comprehension, third is the analyzing, and then the fourth is the utilizing. So the fifth or the metacognitive system, the lastly is the self system. So Marzano'S taxonomy isn't just about learning facts, but it is about understanding the whole process. So from thinking through a problem to understanding and to stay motivated para mahuman ka. So hello again everyone. So I am Lorraine Malabar and I will still be the one to report about the 3 domains. So the first domain is the informative or the declarative knowledge. So this domain involves mental skills and knowledge, and it is also about understanding. So in this domain, it talks about facts, informations, and this includes processes such as memorizing, understanding, and applying the knowledge. So example is the history of World War II. So we would remember and try to understand what happened during the World War II. Next is understanding a mathematical formula. So in order for us to answer, so we would first understand in the equation. Then last example is analyzing a piece of literature. So example is the Romeo and Juliet of William Shakespeare. So let's move on. So the second domain is the affective domain. So the affective domain deals on how we feel on making something during the process or making a task. So it deals with emotion, beliefs, attitudes, and values. So this is about how we feel on making something with or towards other people, situation, or ideas. And this is also where we develop a new feeling like empathy. This is how what we feel on others and to ourselves. So example is we develop an attitude of being respectful to each other when making a teamwork project, or this is also where we have or show our honesty on making something towards others or making a negotiation towards others. It is, in other words, the effective is all about feelings. So the third domain is the psychomotor domain. So the psychomotor domain deals with physical skills and actions. So this is where we learn how to perform, and it requires physical movement, coordination, and the use of senses. So example ani is learning how to bike. So we need a psychomotor um, movement or skills. So next is playing a musical instrument. So and the last example is just simply typing a keyboard. So magamit lang yapon siya og psychomotor domain. So to wrap up, so each domain represents a different aspects of learning, and it is often overlaps. So when you play piano, you need cognitive skills to make or to read music. The second is the cognitive. So ani masud ang cognitive? So motivation and appreciation, affective na siya. And then the physical ability para ma-play nimo ang isa ka music instrument is the psychomotor domain. So I hope you understand something, and that's all my part. Thank you.
Before we discuss about the 6 processing levels, I'm going to discuss first the 3 kinds of memory. The 3 kinds of memories are sensory memory, the working memory, and the permanent memory. Is the sensory memory. So the sensory memory deals with the temporary storage of data from the senses. So whatever the data or information that is gathered from the sense organs, it is temporarily stored in the sensory memory. So number 2 is the working memory. It uses data from both sensory memory and permanent memory. So it is where the data and information that are gathered are actively processed and organized. So the third one is the permanent memory. So it contains all information, organizing ideas, skills, and processes that constitutes the domain of knowledge. In short, all that we understand or know how to do is stored in the permanent memory. Let's proceed to the 6 levels of processing. So the first level is the retrieval. So retrieval is the activation and transfer of knowledge from permanent memory to working memory. So retrieval is the foundational level where learning begins. So it involves the ability to access information stored in permanent memory. So in this level, the basic information from the permanent memory will be transferred into the working memory in order for it to retrieve. So the only one it will retrieve is the basic information only, just like when was Jose Rizal die, when is Jose Rizal born, or in science, what is the powerhouse of the cell, what is the biggest planet of the solar system. Just like that, it's just a basic information only that will be retrieved in the first level. There are 3 sublevels in retrieval or recovery. So number 1 is the recognizing, so identifying account information. So it involves identifying information when it is presented to you. So it is the ability to match or select from options based on familiarity. So recognizing has a cues or option in order for us to choose to retrieve the right information. So the keywords are select from a list, determine whether provided information is accurate, and the example for this is having a multiple choice in the exam or having an identification that has a choices. So number 2 is recalling. So it is the generating or recalling simple information. So it involves retrieving information from memory without external cues. So it is ability to bring up learned information independently. So in the recognizing, there is a cues or an option for us to choose. How, on the other hand, the recalling has no cues or choices to in order for us to choose the right information. We are just using our mind independently. There is no options. So the keywords are exemplify, name, list, label, state, describe, who, what, where, and when. So the example here is name the five senses and also and its function. That's it. So the third one is executing. So executing is performing a procedure. So it involves performing tasks or applying procedure based on the information you have retrieved. So it involves carrying out learned procedures or applying knowledge to complete a task. So the so the keywords here are use, demonstrate, show, make, complete, perform, procedure. So example for this is to perform the 12 basic skills in Arnis or just like that. It's the example of executing. The second level is the comprehension. So the comprehension involves the integration and symbolic representation of the important versus less important aspects of knowledge. So comprehension goes beyond mere recall by ensuring that students understand the material. So it involves interpreting, translating, and summarizing information, making it personally meaningful. So there are two sublevels in comprehension. So number 1 is integrating. So it distilling and organizing information down to its key parts. So it involves combining new information with existing knowledge to form a coherent understanding. So it's about making connections between different pieces of information and seeing how they fit together within a broader context. So the keywords from this is describe the relationship between, describe how or why, describe the key parts of, describe the effects, and summarize. So the example in it is summarizing the story of the tale of Genji. So the second one is the symbolizing. So symbolizing is the knowledge in a non-linguistic form. So symbolizing involves representing information through symbols, diagrams, and other forms of visual representation. So it's about translating ideas and into visual of symbolic forms that can make complex concepts easier to understand. So the keywords here are symbolize, depict, represent, illustrate, draw, show, use models, diagram, chart. So the example is creating and interpreting diagrams like food webs or life cycles that visually represent biological processes. So the third level is the analysis. So analysis is the recent extension of knowledge. An individual elaborates on the knowledge, as comprehended. So, analysis involves breaking down information into smaller parts to explore relationship, structures, and underlying principle. There are five sub-levels in analysis. Number one is matching. It's comparing, creating analogies, creating metaphors, or classifying information. So it involves identifying similarities and differences between items based on certain characteristics or criteria. So it's it's about recognizing correspondence between elements. So the keywords are categorize, compare and contrast, and differentiate. So the example is compare and contrast the parliament system and the presidential system. So number two is the classifying. So the keywords are classify, organize, or sort. So it is a process of grouping items into categories based on shared characteristics. So it involves sorting information into a systematic structure. The example is classifying animals, whether it is a vertebrate or invertebrates, and what kind of vertebrate and invertebrate are they according to their characteristics. Number three is analyzing. So it is identifying and articulating errors in thinking by construction support, analyzing perspective, or error analysis. So it involves identifying mistakes or flaws in reasoning, process, and outcomes. So it's about examining where something went wrong and understanding why. So the keywords are identifying errors or problems, assess, critique, and diagnose. So the example is analyzing the support of an experiment to determine if errors in procedure affected the outcome. So the number four is generalizing. So it's inferring a known generalization and principles from information or inductive reasoning. So it involves forming broad principles or conclusion based on specific example of evidence. So it's about applying patterns observed in one context to a wider range of situations. So the keywords are generalize, conclude, infer. So examples is generalizing the principle of gravity observed in different experiments to understand gravitational forces in various contexts. So number five is specifying. So using generalization and principle to infer unstated conclusion. So it is the process of narrowing down from general ideas to specific details or conditions. So it involves focusing on particular aspects within the broader context. So the keywords are predict, judge, and argue. So the example is specifying detailed examples and evidence to support thesis statement in an essay. Fourth processing level is the knowledge utilization. So it involves using knowledge to accomplish a specific task. So it emphasizes the practical application of learned information. So it requires students to use knowledge creatively to solve problems, make decisions, and conduct experiments. So this level is where learning becomes most relevant to real-world scenarios. So there are four sub-levels in knowledge utilization. So number one is decision making. So it's selecting from among seemingly equal alternatives. So it involves evaluating options and making choices based on criteria and evidence. It's about selecting the best course of action from multiple alternatives. So the keywords are decide, select among similar alternatives, and make choices. So the example is deciding the best strategy for a character in a story based on their circumstances and motivation. So this, number two is problem solving. So accomplishing goals by overcoming limiting conditions. So it involves identifying a problem, generating possible solution, and implementing a plan to resolve the issue. It's about applying knowledge and strategies to overcome obstacles. So the keywords are solve, recognize obstacles, and adapt. So the example is solving world problems by identifying the variables and applying appropriate formulas. So number three is experimenting. So generating and testing explanations for observed phenomena. So it involves testing hypotheses by conducting experiments or trials to gather data and observe outcomes. So it's about using empirical methods to explore and validate ideas. So the keywords are experiment, generate, test, theorize, and predict. So the example is experimenting with chemical reaction to determine the temperature affects reaction rates. So the last one is investigating. So identifying and resolving past, present, and future issues about the which are confusions and contradictions. So it involves exploring a topic deeply to gather evidences, ask questions, and draw conclusions. It's about conducting in-depth research or inquiry to understand a complex issues. So the keywords are investigate, research, take a position on, distinguish features, and report results. So the example is researching the impact of pollution on local ecosystem and presenting findings. So that's all for my report, and I will give the floor to the next reporter.
Let's dive into metacognition. So, metacognition is responsible for monitoring, evaluating, and regulating the functions of all other types of thought. In short, it is thinking about thinking. So, under metacognition, we have here monitoring accuracy. So, it determines the accuracy of understanding and defense judgment. Also, we have monitoring clarity. It determines how well you have understand the knowledge. And then we have peer process monitoring. So it self-monitors the process of achieving a goal. And then specifying goals. It sets specific learning goals and develop a plan to accomplish that goal. And then lastly, we have here examining motivation. It examines motivation to learn and improve. Now, let's discuss about self-system thinking. So it is the interrelated arrangement of attitudes, beliefs, and emotions. Also, it determines whether an individual engage in or disengage in a given task. So under self-system thinking, we have examining emotions. So it identifies the emotional responses associated with knowledge. Secondly, examining efficacy. It examines own beliefs to improve knowledge. And then lastly, examining importance. So it analyzes the importance of knowledge to self. Let's now differentiate Marzano-Kendall from Bloom's taxonomy. So both uses information processing, but Marzano-Kendall is predictive while Bloom's taxonomy is not predictive. Also, Marzano-Kendall separates knowledge and processing, while Bloom's taxonomy combines knowledge and processing. Also, Marzano-Kendall includes psychomotor, while Bloom's taxonomy doesn't have psychomotor. And then, information in Marzano-Kendall are restored and procedures are executed. But in Bloom's taxonomy, information are just recalled. So both has analysis, but Marzano-Kendall uses knowledge utilization, while Bloom's taxonomy uses synthesis only. So in Marzano-Kendall, knowledge are integrated in all levels of processes, while in Bloom's taxonomy, knowledge are just in cognitive level only.